Welcome to session 3 of the Print Persuasion Masterclass. In this session, you're going to be meeting a gentleman that goes by the name of Frank Kern. Frank and I have been making friends over the last, Frank, year and a half, something like that?
Something like that.
And as we've been getting to know each other, I think we've found that our off-kilter senses of humor somehow kind of line up. And maybe that's why we're making friends, I don't know. But lately, over the last several months, after making friends with Frank, I actually started reading some of his copy and then got to see him speak at a friend's program. And I thought to myself, oh my God, this guy is like a copywriting genius. And so when I was putting together the Print Persuasion Masterclass, I asked him to come and teach a session, and he agreed to do that. So, Frank, are you ready?
I am ready, and I only have one request, and that is if anyone's taking notes, when you're writing down copywriting genius, I want you to make sure that the J in genius is capitalized. It's very important. I don't want any kind of bad grammar or punctuation going on in the notes.
That's what I'm talking about. So
Yeah.
Frank's prepared a presentation. He's going to give it. I'm going to just comment and ask a couple of clarifying questions here and there. So Frank, why don't you take it away?
Okay, well, everybody, I'm Frank Kern, and today I'm going to talk about why you and me and everyone else who's doing business on the internet actually has a head start over everybody else. And I'm going to talk about how to get rich using this unfair advantage you have. And for years, I used to believe, only because I was taught, that when it comes to marketing and copy and direct response, the internet specifically is no different than any other kind of advertising media. Media is media is media. There's no difference between marketing and selling on the internet and marketing and selling through direct mail or billboards or whatever. And I believed that for a long time, and also taught it, but now I admit that I was wrong. And after careful consideration, I believe that the internet is a vastly different medium, and if we can understand how it works and apply the psychology of a typical internet user to our copy, we can really get ahead and have some profound impact on our sales, which I think is why everybody's listening. It's a little bit weird for me to be doing a presentation like this not in front of a live audience. I'm usually used to working in front of people and engaging response that way, so please bear with me if this gets a little bogged down or if I start to get lost, and Evan just kind of pull me back on track if I get out of it a little bit. But we'll get started.
That's my favorite job. I'll make a good get you back on track guy.
All right. See, together there's nothing we can't accomplish. My first little slide here is called Grandpa Was Right. It really was harder. And I want you guys to think about for a minute what an incredible opportunity we have today in terms of reaching people and selling to people over the internet. It sounds hypey, I know, but if you could just suspend that hype detection mechanism in your brain for a minute and realize I have nothing to sell you today, then I think this point will really hit home. Years ago, maybe even as soon as 10 or 15 years ago, the only way that we could take a concept or a new product or a new business idea and get it in front of hundreds of thousands or millions of people were traditional means, such as space ads in newspapers and magazines, or direct mail, or you could advertise on the radio and advertise on television. And up until now, all marketing was pretty much formulated based on those mediums. If I were to have to survive in that kind of an environment where that was all you could do to get your business out there in front of people, and that was all you could do to sell stuff to people, I would personally be screwed. And I've got the great fortune of having come alive, so to speak, in terms of marketing on the internet, period. So it's always been a constant for me. I've never done anything else. But taking it away, it'd be horrible. If you think about it for a minute, space ads, newspapers and magazines, tremendous disadvantage compared to what we have right now on the internet. They take forever to test or even see the ad run, and they cost a fortune. $10,000 for a full-page ad, if you're lucky, in some small magazines. Now, direct mail, same thing. Costs a ton. You've got tons of variables in there. Your list could be bad. The mailman could be drunk. And that's not funny, man. Have you ever read Post Office by Charles Bukowski? That chronicles his life as a mailman. He was drunk the whole time. So it takes forever to test, too.
And then of course there's radio, costs a fortune, shotgun approach. You're not really targeting your market that well. And of course it's expensive. And TV, same thing as radio. Now I'm not knocking any of these things, and I know I'm probably telling a lot of people stuff they already know, but I just want to drive home the fact that we are in a position to break new ground here. And new ground in marketing and in copywriting and in persuasion is being broken by people who are paying attention to the way an internet user differs from someone who's interacting with you from these more traditional mediums. So thanks to Al Gore, now we have this wonderful thing called the internet. So here's why it's different than other media. First of all, we can get you exact targeting of your market. Like with direct mail, you can get pretty good. Like if you rented a list from SRDS and you wanted, all the 30 to 40-year-old males with American Express cards who subscribe to Rolling Stone or something, you can get targeted that way. But the internet can really give you exact targeting. Think of pay-per-click search advertising. I mean, if someone types in singles club in Wyoming, then you can market directly in front of that person with a message that says, forget going to singles clubs in Wyoming. David D'Angelo's incredible pickup mastery will have women flying from Cancun directly by helicopter and landing in your living room, which really happens, by the way. So, and of course, you have site-targeted banners. You can advertise in very specific niche-related email newsletters and so forth and so on. I think everyone gets the point. And of course, now what the internet gives us, which we never had before, was performance-based advertising, such as cost per action, basically affiliate programs and so forth, where you don't even spend anything unless the customer is generated. And of course, now online we have real-time testing, which we've always had. So if you're getting 1,000 visitors a day to your website, you can be split testing landing pages and headlines and calls to action in real time. Not like 10 or 15 years ago when you'd send out 10,000 pieces of mail, hope that they ordered a lot from piece A more so than piece B, and wait forever and count all the different things and hope they filled out the coupon right and all that kind of stuff. And of course we have instant exposure now. So if Eben and I want to come up with a new product called Triple Your Dating or something, we can have that in front of millions of people overnight if we want to, just by buying targeted email drops, legitimate email drops, of course, not spam or doing banner advertising or whatever. So we definitely have an advantage, but the biggest advantage, and the one that's not as obvious, is the fact that we can build relationships with people like never before, and we can do it in a fashion where it feels to them, it appears to them like we're talking to them one-on-one. We've never been able to communicate as frequently and as cheaply through so many different modalities as we can now online, and I'll address 2 points in that. First of all, the frequency and cost. Everybody has probably heard of an autoresponder or used one. Well, if you think about where we are now, we take this kind of thing for granted, but if you go back in time, 15 years or so, when there were no autoresponders, before Al Gore invented the internet, we'd be hosed. So if someone responds to one of our full-page ads, which cost us a fortune to begin with, anytime we want to connect with that person, we have to stick a piece of paper in the mail, put a stamp on it, hope the drunk mailman finds their place of business and delivers it to them, and hope that they read it. Or we have to have a telemarketer call them or whatever. Where now, we can write an autoresponder sequence and go away for a year if we want to, and that person's still being contacted every day, and it doesn't really cost us anything. So this groundbreaking for us as marketers right there. And then being able to access people through different modalities is huge. And what I mean by modalities is different ways of communication, such as them reading something, such as them listening to an audio like you're listening to this right now, or maybe even watching a video. So now we communicate with our customers and prospects through email broadcasts. We can get them through all the audio files. We can get to them through podcasting. We can put YouTube videos up there for them, and all this stuff costs us relatively nothing. Of course, we can do teleseminars, which is nothing new. So what we have right now on the internet is the ability to do the natural process of selective selling, or seductive selling, I should say. And seductive selling is a term that I probably didn't make up, but I just chose to use because we're doing this interview with Evan today, and he sells to the seduction market, so I thought it would be cool. But if you think about the way most people go around trying to sell something either on or offline via direct response. I don't mean, if you meet somebody at the car lot or whatever. I'm talking about our industry, the direct response industry. The old way is basically like this. all right, now that I've hit you over the head with this ad and this outrageous headline or whatever, and therefore gotten your attention, let me hard sell the hell out of you before you can get the chance to escape. You know, the old way is just like, I got this one shot, I have to make it right now, and hopefully they'll buy. If not, hopefully someone else will come along and I can repeat the process, which is the way 99% of online and offline business operates. That's the equivalent scenario as me going up to a woman in a bar and saying, hi, my name's Frank. She says, hello, my name's Jane. I say, Jane, let's go to bed. Same thing. There's no relationship building at all. Whereas the real world, the way things happen, the way we make decisions is more like, now that you know me and we have a relationship, it's time to invest in my stuff. Similar to what would happen if you were actually courting someone. Well, you know, Jane, now that we've gone to dinner a couple times and gone to some movies, you know, maybe you should come over and spend the night or whatever. It's common sense, I know, but we defy common sense when we don't take advantage of everything the internet has to offer us. When we do this one-shot, hardcore sell thing, we're really going against human behavior, which in the past we had really no choice, but now we can use it to our advantage. So
Frank?
I think everyone would. Are you talking to me?
Well, I was trying.
Are you interrupting what I'm saying here? Because that was really good.
No, I wanted to amplify something if I could.
I was just asking. Yeah, go ahead.
I know. No, what you're saying it's very interesting, and I want to just zoom at it from a different perspective, because this is something that I've personally not talked about really anywhere. But you're calling up a realization that's really coming upon me in the last 6 or 12 months, which is that in business, the idea of having a relationship with someone, having a personal, one-on-one, caring, trusting, I like you, you like me relationship is kind of frowned upon. Not only is it frowned upon between employer and employee, like in that context, where they say don't get too close to the people you work with, but also in the bigger business sense, a lot of bigger companies just don't understand the model of building relationship with a customer. They don't value customers using a lifetime value model. They only value them on a one-shot sale model. And I think that the internet, one of the cool things that it's doing is it's bringing an awareness that not only is it a good idea to build relationships, but it's also profitable.
Well, it's insanely profitable. And, the whole relationship selling thing is kind of hokey sounding and a little bit soft and fruity in a lot of ways. And when I say like build relationships, I don't mean, become best friends with everybody on your prospect list or whatever, but I do mean give the appearance that you're becoming best friends with everybody on your prospect list. I think a lot of the reasons people kind of like hear the word relationship marketing and then say, oh, well, they glaze over, which is what I would do if I didn't really understand the context of it, is because they think they're going to have to sacrifice all of this personal time and attention, where 10 or 15 years ago you would have to, or you at least would have to go through enormous expense to maintain the illusion of you having a personal one-on-one relationship with your customers and prospects. But now, because of the internet and because of our ability to communicate with people almost instantly and almost for free, it's alive, so we might as well take advantage of it. Like, if you think about, if you get inside the mind of even yourself when you're making a buying decision, when you don't have a relationship with the person you're selling, you always have that undercurrent of fear. What if I'm making the wrong decision? What if this person is ripping me off? What if my friends laugh at me or whatever? Because you haven't really had a chance to get warmed up to the idea of buying. But if you're buying from someone you know, like, and trust, and you felt like you've known them for a long time, even if you haven't, if you just have that perception, then it's a no-brainer. That fear is eliminated and you're ready to go. So if I were to have to sell in one of those two environments, of course I would choose the latter because it's easier. So if you think about it, like, what's the best way to sell something, or the best way to communicate with your prospects? I think everyone would agree that the most effective way would be face-to-face. I don't mean effective on a grand scale. I meant like if you had to sell one dude one thing, the easiest way for you to communicate with him would be to sit down at a bar and be like, man, okay, here's this product. It's awesome. I really think you'll like it. As opposed to sending him letters and so forth. And there are lots of reasons for this. It's because you get feedback from him in real time. In my opinion, is the best reason. Like, you can watch that person. You can watch his body language. You can, see his reaction to what you're saying, and then you can calibrate your marketing presentation to him accordingly in real time. So if I'm telling Evan about how awesome how awesome my product is, and I see him glazing over, and well, as soon as I mention like a particular feature, I know, even without him telling me, just from me watching him, that he's not interested in that, and I calibrate my presentation and focus on something else. So obviously, face-to-face marketing is the best way to go. Well, the internet allows you to come as close as humanly possible to face-to-face marketing without actually doing it, and it allows you to do it with hundreds of thousands or millions of people simultaneously, which is great. And if done right, each of those people have some sense that you are communicating with them directly, which is awesome. Now think about this. If face-to-face selling is the best and most effective way, again, I'm not saying it's the easiest and the funnest, but if you had to sell something to one person, that would be the best. If we can establish that the reason why it's so effective is because you can actually watch the person's reactions and gauge your presentation accordingly, then with that said, here's why the internet is just about as good. When you're selling online and you're doing it right, you get feedback from your crowd. I'll refer to the list now as your crowd. You get feedback from your crowd in real time. So let's say that Eben and I are going to roll out a product called tripleyourdating.com, and we've got this crowd of 30,000 people or whatever, and I send out an email talking about how great it is. Well, what's going to happen? Oh, and also within that email I say, you can find out more about this on my blog or whatever. What happens, like almost immediately? People send in replies, right? They might send in replies that say, screw you, I'm not interested, unsubscribe. They might send in replies that say, this is going to be great, how much is it? They could say anything. But what's happening is within minutes or hours at the most, you're going to be able to read those replies and therefore calibrate your next message to them based on what they said. Same thing with blog posts. If you have something on your blog, you can read your comments on the blog and then know you have a sense of the way your crowd as a whole, you need to start looking at them as if they're one object, one person. You have a sense of how your crowd as a whole is responding to what you're doing. So it's very powerful stuff. You can also gauge response in real time based on where they're going on your site. So if you have a website and like 90% of the people are going to your frequently asked questions and then leaving or something, then you know that there's some kind of issue you need to resolve. Where you would never ever have the ability to do this with direct mail or print ads or radio or television. You don't have that kind of interaction. And the most powerful thing is you can always tailor your next message based on the feedback your crowd gives you after they read your last one, and then you deliver it to them on your terms. So you kind of control the whole dialogue. So I'll give you a more specific example. All right, so Evan and I decided to release a new dating system called Triple Your Dating. So we blast out the email to our 20,000 person subscriber list or whatever. And we say, Triple Your Dating secrets coming soon. Go to the blog and check out what it's all about. So people go to the blog and then they start posting their concerns. So your next email, based on what you just heard back from your market, is going to say, by the way, just so you know, Triple Your Dating Secrets contains a special bonus chapter for free. See, this way you're having, in a sense, a conversation in real time, as we're spread out a little while, with your crowd, and you can adapt to their feedback. It's very powerful. Let's talk about the C word. The word is context. Now, here's like the big distinction everyone needs to know about selling things and communicating with people on the internet versus every other thing you've ever done. Context. Here's the deal. People who use the internet are often in a totally different headspace compared to people reading the paper or watching television or opening their mail or listening to the radio or doing any other thing that the people who used to teach marketing before us were used to dealing with. They're in a completely different frame of mind. Like that, when they get in front of that little computer or big computer or whatever and log onto the internet to do any host of activities, they are in a totally different frame of mind than if they're reading the paper or something. And I'll elaborate on that. First of all, when you're online, you can be doing a myriad of things, and you can reach your customers online through a myriad of ways. And what's interesting is every single activity that we typically reach them through, they have a different mindset. So one popular way to get people's attention on the internet, and one of my favorite ways, is pay-per-click search engine traffic. So a search engine user has a completely different frame of mind than someone who's doing something else on the internet. They're usually in a problem/solution mindset, so they are typing in something like, I don't know, hemorrhoid remedy or whatever. They've got this problem, they want a solution. That's why they're in that mindset. Or they're in a getting ready to buy mindset. So they might do a search for 1997 Honda Accord prices. You see, so they're doing a little bit of research, getting ready to buy something. Those are the types of people we're after. Of course, you can have people looking up for lost classmates or whatever, but in terms of commerce and buying, they're usually going to fall pretty good in that category, or one of those two categories, problem, solution, or getting ready to buy. What else do people do, or how else can we reach them online? Blogs are another way, getting even more and more popular. I don't have one personally, but that's just because I'm uncool. But a blog reader, completely different frame of mind than a search engine user, even though technically they're both internet users, right? A blog user is usually in a news-getting or entertainment frame of mind. So a blog reader is going to go to, say, I don't know, John Reese's blog at income.com to find out what's new with his product that he's been releasing and so forth and so on. Or they might be in an entertainment frame of mind where they're going to read the Perez Hilton guy's blog and just, waste some time and screw around and see what, see what Nicole Richie has eaten this month or whatever. And then, of course, you have my favorite way of reaching people online, which is email, and they're in a completely different frame of mind than all these other guys we just talked about. An email reader is usually in a let's be productive type frame of mind, or I wonder what's up with whoever frame of mind. So they're either like trying to get something done, or they're just checking on stuff, continuing relationships with people they've had. Now, the rest of the copy I'm going to talk to you about, or the real meat of this presentation, I want to talk about writing email copy, because that's where I've been able to have the best success personally, is through writing copy for email specifically. So, and it makes you more money faster. I mean, if you get the whole email thing down, you can buy a list or buy a mailing to a list of targeted people and get your message in front of 1 million people like instantly. So that's great. I'm not talking about spam either, but let's look at email, like really do an in-depth look at it. If you take the work part out of email, then you'll see the main reason we use email is to communicate with our friends. So when someone checks their email, they're usually going to be seeing what's new over at grandma's house, or they want to see if like Edwards in accounting sent their reports over to Hasselhoff in sales, right? So that's going to be work. But if you take away work and the whole productivity part of their minds, you're usually just continuing relationships with people they've already got. Oh, I wonder if grandma sent me a picture from the picnic or whatever. I can tell you what they're not doing is they're not wondering if you sent them an offer. And tons of people make this false assumption that just because someone's on my list, well, now they sit around all day and wait for me to send them an offer so they can get my latest business opportunity in a box or whatever it may be, and it's false. Here are the real true priorities, and this is like inside the mind of your typical person sitting in front of his or her computer checking email. First priority, first thing that person's going to open after looking and seeing their 200 new messages, going to be the topless spring break pictures that are forwarded from his old frat buddy. It's human nature. Might as well deal with that. Second thing that's going to jump out above everything else is going to be the reply from the girl you met on MySpace or something similar. Third thing and last will be anything work-related. Okay? The dead last is going to be your stuff, unless you get the stuff right and understand how to deal with them. Now, you got somebody on your list, right? I mean, obviously, we're not going to send emails to anybody unless they're on our list or unless we're renting someone else's list, legally, of course. And I assume that everyone who's listening to this is primarily interested in communicating with their own people. Well, think about why you got them in the first place, all right? The reason someone's going to join your list is because they want content. So they find you on we'll take Evan's business, for example, Double Your Dating. Someone types in dating advice. They're in a problem-solution mindset. They see Evan's thing that says you're about to learn things about women that most guys never know. They say, I want to learn that. Bam, they opt in. They're wanting content. That's why they joined. Now, the way you keep them is through character. See, I'm really big on the C words today. I think that's all I got, actually. I'm out of C words. That's my last C word. And here's what I mean by that. You become a character that they're interested in and that they follow, almost like they're getting a soap opera by email every day or whenever you elect to send them. Now, the drama is entirely optional. But after a while, there's only so much content that they're interested in. They're going to get tired of hearing about it. And they start to bond with the author. They become more intrigued with the character who's writing them than they do the actual content. The bottom line is we remember and respond more to entertainment than we do to useful knowledge. And that's why I say character beats content every time. Now, I'm not in any way saying like just never give anybody anything of value. That's ridiculous. But there's going to come a time when you're going to need to start building up your character and really bonding with these people. And let me prove to you it's right. I want everybody to take a little quiz here. This is going to be like a 10-second quiz. All right, time yourself. Question 1. Name 3 things you learned in college. Yes, I'm talking about the same college that you spent about $100,000 to attend. Okay, now name 3 characters from Seinfeld. Okay, which question do you think he answered fastest? Seinfeld, of course. That proves it. You spend $100,000 or so going to college, some people more, some people less. You have to sit there and go, well, I don't know. And then the whole Seinfeld thing is instant. You know, Jerry Kramer Lane. Instant knowledge. You remember and bond to entertainment and characters more so than you do the content. We all do. It's nothing revolutionary. It's just people don't want to admit it. So here's how you turn this knowledge into money. Everyone that's listening to this probably has an autoresponder series or knows what an autoresponder series is and plans on setting one up, which is good. Here's what I recommend you do. Let's imagine that you're in front of this graph and you have day 1 through 7 on your follow-up sequence as the graph. Well, your first email to them needs to be mostly content. So if you're looking at the graph, like the big bar would be content, and then beside it would be a little bar that says character. And as the progression goes further, by the time you're at day 7, you're mainly introducing the character more than the content. Now, you're thinking, all right, well, what do you mean by character? All right, am I going to give myself a new name or whatever? And the answer to that is yeah, sort of. See, because people bond with characters more than they do with content, you need to become a memorable person in their minds. You need to have a story. You need to have a backstory. You need to have a reason why you're doing all this kind of stuff. I mean, a classic, backstory would be like I used to be a nerd with women. I remember when I lived in my mother's basement and I never met any women, and now I discovered this method and I'm the dating guru. And every time you give them any content, any kind of feedback, you hammer that story home and you give a little story about how we went out the other night or whatever. They're following along in your lives. So you can develop character by assuming some identities, and I'll just go over a few really easy ones. The 3 ones that come to mind are going to be the leader character, the adventurer/crusader character, or the reporter/evangelist character. And I realize that none of that is really going to mean anything, so I'll explain. Let's start with the leader. The leader character is where in your persona and in your marketing and in your email follow-ups, you basically just hit them over the head and tell them what to do from the get-go. You're their drill sergeant. This is a very common way to go about things. Don't be timid about it. People want to be led. And what you do is you focus on their problem, whatever it is they're trying to fix, and you divert attention from you. It's important to understand that when you're building these relationships with people through emails, through autoresponders, it's always about them. Even though you're developing a character, the whole point of the character is to point out the fact that they want something and that you have the solution. So you focus on their problem and divert the attention away from you. And you don't have to be a doctor or have some sort of certification of expertise. You're the expert and you're the leader because you say that you're the expert and the leader. And one of my favorite people who does this is Tony Robbins. Like, Tony doesn't have any sort of degree in psychology or whatever. He just comes out and says, you should listen to me. By God, I'm the leader. And people in droves say, okay, yeah, wow. Well, he said it on television. He must be the leader. It says so right there in the email. He's the leader. It's got to be true. That's the way our minds work, so exploit it. And your stuff works because you say it works. So if I were to be Evan and I were to take the course of the leader, I would say something like, dear friend, well, did you call her yet? Yeah, I'm talking about that girl that you met in the bar. You know you met the girl in the bar, right? You did use the triple hoop method that I talked to you about. Yeah, I remember I used to be a loser too. I didn't meet any women, used to live in my mother's basement, and now I practically have to change my identity and wear a disguise every time I go out because they chase me and follow me home. I'm not saying this to brag to you, but here's the deal. If you want to meet women and you want to be successful with them, there's some things you need to understand. Here's your problem, blah, blah, blah. Here's what you need to do about it. Invest in my course. Here's why, blah, 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 at the end. That's a classic example of a leadership persona and email copy. Notice it's very conversational. You focus on them give a little backstory like I told you about. I used to live in my mother's basement. Now I meet lots of women. Then you focus on their problem, tell them what to do about it, which is, of course, to buy your stuff, which is very good.
Hey,
Am I
Frank?
going too fast with this? Yeah.
No, I want to comment on that because there's I'm trying to think like a person who's listening to you right now who doesn't have experience with this, because a lot of people say, well, I don't sell a course on dating, I sell lawnmowers or whatever it is, and so that that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But the reality is that when you're selling stuff, you've got to get out of the mindset of I'm this timid person who's got to try to somehow talk people into doing things, and I've got to win their approval and make them like me. And you've got to realize, you said something that's very important. If you focus on their problem and you take all of the focus off of yourself, it's hypnotic. It's mesmerizing. If you say to a person, hey, you've got a problem, and you're right, like that is actually their problem, they can't help but acknowledge that you're right. And then if you say, oh, and by the way, your problem is worse than you think it is. In fact, I used to have that same problem, and I know a lot of people who have that problem, and here's what my experience has been with it, and because you're neglecting it, it's getting worse and worse and worse, and if you keep neglecting it, in 6 months, it's going to be 10 times as bad, and in fact, you're not going to be able to fix it then. This kind of conversation is just, it's riveting for the listener, and it's not offensive because you're talking about something that they care about. And so as a takeaway here, I'm just going to kind of make a little side note. As a takeaway, you might want to make a note that if you can figure out how to talk about your prospect's problem authoritatively and say, here's what your problem is, here's how it happened, here's what's making it worse, and in fact, you being lazy and not doing something about it is even causing it to get worse at a faster rate. And if you don't fix it now, it's going to be so bad by the time you get around to it that it's going to be unfixable, and it's going to cost you 1,000 times as much in time, effort, energy, money, pain, and hassle. All right, that's all I've got to say.
What's funny that you said that is I think the last time I saw you in person was a couple months ago at Jeff Walker's thing, and you had spoken, and I took notes, and I have the notes in front of me, and it says, if you can describe a person's problem better than they can, they will unconsciously believe that you have the answer, which I think what you said echoes that point that you made at Jeff's. Which is true. If you just focus on the problem, and you can, if you make them say, "Good Lord, he's right," I never even realized that's going to happen. Then they're going to be drawn to you. You're the leader. Okay, well, what do I do? That's their next logical question in their mind. Okay, well, what should I do? You're right. What should I do? To which
and
your
also,
answer, of course, is give me money.
And I will give you the secret. We humans are in so much denial all the time. We are so trying to block out our problems and block out our fears and block out all the issues that could happen, that when someone whacks us across the head and kicks us in the butt with them and says, hey, you've got a problem and you got to do something about this, but then says it in a way that underneath it you can actually tell that they've been through it as well, and that it's not really that bad, and they're going to take you by the hand and they're going to lead you through it, and they're going to say, you know what, you got a problem, it sucks, but I can help you get out of it, but you got to act now. It really resonates with people. One of the things I've discovered, Frank, is that when people, especially when it's a problem-based thing, when there's pain, what we humans do is we isolate, we pull in, we shut down, we close the shades, we stop talking about it, we don't want to tell anyone, we don't want to reveal it, we don't want to look like an idiot. So then we become even more closed up and more disconnected from other humans. And when someone reaches out and both kicks us in the ass and says, you got a really big problem, you need to do something about this, and I understand your problem, and I can help you fix it, it's a very persuasive and powerful combination.
I agree. And it does work for something as mundane as lawnmowers. So I'll just brainstorm, kind of ad lib a piece of copy that will go out for the lawnmower person. Dear Bob, yeah, you probably have them, burn spots in your yard, most likely because your lawnmower's too low. I used to do the same thing. As a matter of fact, my wife almost divorced me because every year we'd have this tour of gardens, and our yard would get skipped over because of the burn marks. You know what? If you keep on doing what you're doing, you're going to end up with holes in your yard. Next thing you know, you're going to have to resod it. That's what I had to do, and that's what led me to start investing in the Snapper Super Mower 2000. Now listen, Well, after I spent 20 grand laying new sod in my front yard, I knew that if I didn't get it right this time, not only was I going to have to buy sod again, but I was also going to have to buy a new house because my wife was going to kick me out and I'd be living with the dog in some kind of cheap bachelor's apartment somewhere. That's when I started investigating lawnmowers, and that's when I finally discovered the Super Snapper 2000. Here's why it's different. Here's why it'll work for you. Order now. The end. Same thing. You know, so it can work for anything. You just have to kind of open your mind up and get a little fluid. So the next character you can assume if you want to, and incidentally, I should interject that everything you say needs to be true, you know, so you take whatever your true story is and you say, well, okay, well, my story would adapt well with one of these type of characters. With that said, the next person that you could be would be the adventurer crusader type character. And this is the type of thing where you make a shocking discovery, you know, like, oh, I was at the library the other day when I dusted off this old 1907 manuscript about rejected patent ideas, and it fell to the ground, and right there open before me was this patent idea on how to make a super lawnmower, and you know, I don't know why the patent office rejected it, but I took it home, and my 13-year-old son, who's a whiz kid, put a little prototype together for me, and now all I have to do is drink beer, and my lawn automatically mows itself thanks to this amazing discovery. That's obviously a blown-up, stupid example, but you get the point. This is a very effective personality take if you're doing a controversial, anti-establishment type ads. Like Amazing Discovery reveals how to cure your arthritis naturally. This is the information that the billion-dollar pharmaceutical company prays you never discover. Something like that. It exposes what they are hiding. Kevin Trudeau of the natural cures they don't want you to know is a very good example of an adventurer / crusader kind of person. And a common theme in your relationship building with the adventurer crusader, where you're crusading for or against something, is that it's their fault. It's always their fault. Whoever that enemy is, it's their fault. So adventurer crusader is another good character that you can become. Of course, you can also become the reporter evangelist. And I like these. These are usually based on a before and after story. And of course, again, like I said, you need to be always telling the truth, but if anything in your business life resonates with any of these things, use them, please. So before and after story. I like a good before and after ongoing saga of loss and redemption. Tales and stories of loss and redemption are the most popular stories ever, period. If you ever might have heard of a movie called Rocky or Rocky 1 or Rocky 5000, Loss and Redemption. You know, Rocky's champ, loses it all, redeems himself. Karate Kid, same thing. Top Gun, you know, Tom Cruise is this great fighter pilot. His buddy gets killed, he flips out and redeems himself. The best-selling novelist of all time, I think, still, a guy named Harold Robbins. He used to sell 25,000 copies of his books a day for years, incidentally. All of his stories are loss and redemption. They all follow the same formula. Guy's born poor, broke parents, builds a moderately successful business, loses it, builds one even better. A real-life example that lots of you guys might be familiar with in terms of a reporter evangelist before and after type story would be Jeff Paul with his $4,000 in a day, money in your underwear original sales letter. His story was, I was a moderately successful financial planner. My partner screwed me. I lost everything. I ended up living in my sister's basement. I tried to make business work. I lost more and more money. I was $100,000 in debt. Then I discovered the secret. Now I'm rich. Now I'm an evangelist for the secret. Here's the method I use. I'm going to tell the world. I discovered it. I'm reporting about it. I'm an evangelist. I'm telling everybody. And any time that he ever did anything, he always told that story over and over again. Neil Strauss, someone who's in your niche, Evan, his story is, I used to be a hopeless geek. Now I'm successful with women. Classic loss and redemption. I discovered this method, and now I'm an evangelist. I'm here to share it with the men of the world. I'm on a mission. I'm going to report my findings. I'm going to share them with everybody. I'm an evangelist for it. Same thing. The thing you need to understand is if you're doing this, that if you're developing a reporter / evangelist type character through your marketing, through your email, the hero of the story is usually the thing that you're selling. That's actually always the thing that you're selling. It's not you. So you're using yourself and your own story about what you discovered and your own loss and redemption, or it could be third party if you want, to act as like a metaphor for how great this thing is. So it's like you'll notice Jeff Paul was never I used to be broke. I lived in my sister's basement. Now I'm great, and therefore I'm rich. No, it's never that. It was I used to be broke, lived in my sister's basement. I discovered this method. This method is great. This method made me rich. Same thing with Neil. He used to be a geek. I was embarrassed. You know, he had some old videos of himself on YouTube to show that he was a geek. Now I discovered the method. This method made me successful. It's always about the thing, not you. So,
You know, Frank, I want to point one thing out too to anyone listening, which is, you know, you're talking about these approaches, and as I'm listening to them, I'm thinking about them, and I'm thinking, you know, it took me a long time to discover that approaches like this simple, personable, here's my story, here's how I did it, and just some, you know, basic copy telling, you know, talking about how I went from I didn't know what the hell to do, I learned this thing, it took me to the next level. That it almost at one level sounds too simple. It sounds like it's too easy. It couldn't really be that simple. I've got to make it harder. But I know you and I both have sold a lot of products using these approaches. And in fact, you know, I didn't mention this earlier, but you're an expert in the topic of launching, or the subject of launching various products. And you've sold millions of dollars worth of products and assisted others in selling millions of dollars worth of products, sometimes inside of one day with these exact
it's always one day. Yeah, that's
approaches.
The goal. It's got to be all in one day, or else it doesn't count.
How many have you been involved with now that have done $1 million or more in one day?
Let's see, 3 out of 5 that I've ever done have been $1 million in a day, and it actually never took a full day. The first one was a product in the dating market that did $1.4 million in 4 hours. The second one and third ones were in the internet marketing market. And God, the first one, I really don't know the real total. I could get it if I called the guys that owned the business that I was doing the work for, but I think it was something like $15 million, something like that in the first day. And those were people paying on installments, so you assuming that everybody paid. And the second one was like $2 million something in the first day, first couple of hours actually, when they shut it down. So it works, like all this stuff, and every single time it's been a story. You know, it's telling a story of how the product came to be. It's telling the story of how freaked out we are doing this launch. Telling the story of how, you know, my wife's mad at me because I was up until 3 o'clock in the morning answering questions that were posted on my blog. It's always telling the regular guy story every single time.
Thank you.
It works. You know. Yeah, no point in reinventing the wheel. So here's some different storylines you can swipe, because it's always about the story and the character, right? That's what sells. That's why we remember Seinfeld more than we remember college algebra, even though we didn't spend any money to watch Seinfeld and we spent $100,000 to go to college. Theoretically speaking, if we did, I didn't. But I would have spent $100,000 had I gone to a $100,000 university. So here's some storylines you can swipe. One is the before and after story, and I'll give you some examples of these things. 2 is the discovery story. 3 is telling secrets, which of course is always good. 4th is the third person testimonial, and the 5th is one of my all-time favorites, the us versus them saga, which is great. So I know that's a lot of different storylines. I'll give you a kind of an example timeline that's using them all. Okay, so you guys are all familiar, I would assume, and if you're not at the moment, you will be when you listen to John Carlton speak on this teleclass. The ad for the amazing discovery of the one-legged golfer. That's one of John Carlton's more famous and most successful ads. So we'll just use that as a hypothetical basis for our story. So now we're telling the story of the one-legged golfer, not in a sales letter, but in an ongoing email sequence. So first you have the amazing discovery made. I saw this one-legged golfer. It's the damnedest thing I ever saw in my life. And then now we can have the story of loss and redemption. And that would be, you know, and when I saw this guy, they laughed at him when they saw him hopped up to the tee. Right? So that's heading into a little bit of before and after type of storyline. And of course, the whole thing can be a third-person testimonial as well. And then the third step in this would be, and then I personally met this one-legged guy. I was a terrible golfer until the day I met him. So now we're going into the third-person testimonial. And then we're going to start telling some secrets. Then the one-legged golfer showed me his secret method, all right? And now you have the transformation. Now that he's shown me the secret method, I embarrass the pros at the golf club every time. So that's using them all right there, little sentences that kind of imply all of those storylines that people can use. It's very important to bond with your crowd. Like all of the stuff I'm telling you about is mainly to be used in email copy, not so much of a sales letter. And it's very effective even if you have a list of 5 or 10 people, all the way up to 5 or 10 million people. It works just the same. People are people. And it's important to think of your crowd as a single organism, like one person. If you took all those people in your list and you just put them in this machine and it spat out one dude named Bob, that's who you're writing to every time. So there's some things that you can use, some techniques you can use to like bond with them very quickly. The best is to use real-time feedback to tailor your message. So if you are doing a launch, for example, and you're doing like we talked about earlier with chloroform secrets, all those replies that come back to you, if you notice some common themes where people are freaking out about potential price or raising objections, you mention that in your next email message to them. You say, you know, Bob, I was thinking the other day that people might start getting freaked out thinking I'm going to charge an arm and a leg for chloroform secrets. And I just want you to know that I'm not. And my friends are making fun of me about it because they've seen the giant box of stuff you get with this course, but I really don't feel comfortable charging an arm and a leg for it. I haven't decided on the full price yet. But when I do, I'll tell you, it's probably going to be, I know it's going to be less than what the other guys are charging at $2,000. I think that's ridiculous, but I don't have a firm price now. But anyway, let me tell you what happened to me the other day. Bam. And then off you go on to some story, which again, the whole point of the story is to talk about how great the thing is that you're selling. So I'll give you a real example of that. Actually, when I was doing a launch for somebody in the internet marketing world, we sent out an email about the new course, and the replies that came in were people saying, you know, I hope this isn't about AdWords because PPC costs a fortune, pay-per-click costs a fortune. Or I hope this wasn't about search engines because, you know, I can't figure out SEO and I'm tired of dealing with it. I've been ripped off. Or I hope it's not about finding joint venture partners or whatever. So when you have that, you can bond even further with people. You can use that feedback and you can draw them in by focusing on what your product is not. So in this case, if you're saying, I hope this isn't SEO, or I hope it's not AdSense, or I hope it's not about a pay-per-click or whatever, if you focus on what it's not, you're doing two things. You're like validating them because they're like, oh, good, I'm glad they don't like that stuff either, and you're overcoming the objection. So what you want to do is you find your market's frustrations and you hammer on them remorselessly. So let's take that example where they were concerned about AdSense and PPC and everything. The copy would say something like, listen, you know, what we're going to show you is brand new, no one's doing it, and I just want you to know that, look, this is how to make tons of money on the internet without using Google AdWords, and it's without using Overture, and without using search engine optimization, and without having any joint venture partners. You know, the fact of the matter is that stuff might have worked years ago, and it might work for some sort of uber geniuses today, but regular people like me and you need a different type of advantage, and that's what my system is about, blah, blah, blah. So you just validated them by saying it's not about all the stuff you were freaking out about, and you're right to be freaked out about it because it does suck. And it's about something different. People like me and you can use it to our advantage. So it's good stuff. And of course, when they do have objections, which they're going to give you, and you need to pay attention to, you associate their objections with the enemy. And the enemy is always going to be some other person. So that brings us to the whole us versus them type of storytelling. The fact of the matter is common enemies bring us together. And common enemies can get people to do things that they would never, ever do in real life. So I'll prove it now. I'll give you a headline for an ad, and I just want your opinion on if you think it would pull. You ready?
Born ready.
All right. I've worked for hours on this now, so if it sucks, just tell me. I'll go back to the drawing board. Here's my ad. Who else wants to leave their families, risk their lives, kill other people they've never met, watch their friends get blown to hell, and most likely die in the process? Do you think I'm going to get a good response from that?
No.
Well, screw you, man. Teach your own class. You know, obviously, you wouldn't get you wouldn't get a good response from that, right? But people go off to war anyway because they have to battle this common enemy. Proof that it works is if you look at Germany in World War II. You know, people committed unspeakable atrocities against their fellow man because they had been convinced that they all shared this common enemy, right? I'm not saying what they did was right. I'm just saying that the common enemy thing works. You can use it without being horrible. And it's working right now. I mean, what caused Americans to somehow not notice that Osama bin Laden magically morphed into Saddam Hussein a couple of years ago and then sort of ignored the fact that no weapons of mass destruction were ever found? I mean, wasn't that the reason we were over there? Weren't we supposed to get bin Laden, who somehow turned into Hussein so we could get his missing weapons of mass destruction? Like, all that stuff glazed over because, by God, we've been sold this common enemy. You know, the terrorists, they're everywhere. Probably one under your desk right now. You better watch out. You better buy the anti-terrorist hat so that it'll repel them, you know. So here's how you use this in real life without being obnoxious about it. You find your marketplace's frustrations, which they're going to give you, and you need to, like, monitor the emails they send in so you can see. You stir up their frustration, you find the common enemy, and you blame all that frustration on the common enemy. The object is to bond with your reader and give them absolution for their own incompetence. So here's what I mean. You're not making money because those pesky gurus aren't telling you everything. That's the way to do it, right? The common enemy in the business opportunity market or in the internet marketing world is going to be those gurus, those guys who are always trying to sell you something. No wonder you're not making any money on the internet. You got 10 different guys telling you that 10 different things are going to work, and they're all supposed to be the magic bullet. You can't live without any of them. Well, I think they're all full of crap. They're only wanting to make money for themselves. Here's a system regular people like me and you can use, and better yet, it's been proven to work on more regular people, mom and dads and kids just like you. Here's what it's all about. You see? That frustration is they've spent tons and tons of money already on marketing courses. They haven't made any money. And their frustration is that these gurus probably ripped me off. So you just say, hey, it's their fault. You never want to bring up the fact that it's, you know, it's really the other person's fault because they didn't use any of the information they bought. For God's sake, don't say that. You know, it's just pesky gurus. They printed their manuals in invisible ink or something, you know. All right, so we're stirring up the people's frustrations, and we're blaming it on the common enemy. So what you want to say is it's simply not the reader's fault, you know, which in reality, of course, normally it is, right? I mean, you weigh 300 pounds because you drink beer and eat potato chips, and the last time you exercised was, you know, when you went to the mailbox or something, but it's really not your fault, all right? And here's the psychology behind that. The absolution will generate the obedience. You're relieving them so much by giving them someone else to blame other than themselves that they're going to want to do what you say, or at least pay attention to you. So absolution generates obedience, you know? So, like, the reality is, if we're talking to the internet marketing crowd who are frustrated, the guys who've bought 400 different products already and still haven't made any money, the reality thing, if we were to speak to them frankly, would be, listen, if you'd actually read the directions, you know, use the stuff that you bought, take some action, stop being a whiny shitwad, and not quit at the first sign of any trouble, you probably wouldn't have this problem and you would have a real business at work. Now, that's the reality. But the blame it on the gurus thing would be, of course you're having problems. You know, the so-called gurus aren't telling you the whole story. It's their fault. Now, follow me as I show you what they're hiding from you. So I think you guys get the point. Now, you have to be careful because when you're building a character, any of the character types I'm telling you about, especially if you're going to go down the us versus them route, you have to admit that something is wrong with you. Now, I don't ever have to admit that because it's obvious. You know, that would be like super redundant. But the fact is people love flawed characters. I learned this from Dan Kennedy. He talks about Superman. You know, every major character has got their flaws. Superman, he's, you know, the kryptonite. That's his flaw, right? So you need to make a damaging admission. It can be about you or your product. It doesn't matter. So an example would be if I was going to sell something to the internet marketing crowd, I might say, listen, you know what? My system isn't a magic bullet. It's not going to work for everybody. Sometimes you'll use the system in a new market and it won't work. Hell, nobody hits a home run every time, but I can tell you this. If you don't make your money back, or if you're not absolutely thrilled for any reason at all, I'll give you a full refund, plus I'll let you keep blah, blah, blah. But you see what I just did there is I made the damaging admission. I said, you know what? It's not going to work every time. It's not a magic bullet. And people like that. They respect it. And of course, you want to turn your damaging admission into a selling point. So if anyone is familiar with me or my work, then they're going to know that I was sued by the Federal Trade Commission in 2003. So whenever I'm selling a business opportunity type package, which I rarely do now, I would say, you know, I was sued by the Federal Trade Commission in 2003, and they took away everything I owned. And I literally had to start over. It cost me over $350,000, not to mention it ruined my reputation, totally freaked me out. But the fact of the matter is I use what I'm going to show you now to rebuild from the ashes. And you know what? I want you to know that I'm not going to make any false promises to you. This doesn't work for everybody. You and I have never met. You could be Charles Manson for all I know, but this worked for me, and I believe that if it worked for me, it can work for you. That's why I'm offering this outrageous guarantee. Try the system. Put it to work for you. And if you find you don't like it for any reason at all, you can have all of your money back. And you know what? You can even keep the whole system for free. I wish back when I was struggling, someone would have come along and given me an offer like that, because I would have jumped at it. You see, you take that damaging admission, you turn it into a positive. The fact that you even made the damaging admission in the first place is going to make you out to be a nice guy in their minds. And when you are making your damaging admission, you need to use that as further leverage with your prospect and with your reader. So you'd say something like, at least I'm upfront with you, right? You use your damaging admission to invalidate the competition. It's almost like saying, you know, sure, it is embarrassing that I got sued by the Federal Trade Commission, but you know what? At least I told you that and I was upfront with you about it. And I see all these other people in the industry making false claims, and I know some of them have gotten in hot water and they're up to their same old tricks. You know, I'm not going to make any moral judgment about these folks, but I just think you ought to be careful. If anyone comes along with saying that you're going to make $1 million overnight, if there's something seems too good to be true, it probably is. That's why you should give this a try. You see, this thing was hard for me to understand and learn and master, but because I've come up with this unique system, now I'm able to live a life of complete financial freedom. And it may or may not work for you. I'm willing to bet that it is. As a matter of fact, I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is and make this insane guarantee that's got all these other hucksters running for the hills. Here it is. Put my system to work for you. Give it a try. If you don't like it for any reason, even if I make a misspelling on page 3 or whatever, send it back. You can have all of your money back, plus I'll let you keep everything for free. Your word is gold with me. Just give it a shot. You see, you just turn that right around and use it in your favor. Or if we were to sell copywriting, we might say something like, sure, learning to write copy might take time and effort, but listen, why waste time with other false hope generating schemes like trashy AdSense sites or multi-level marketing? If you take the 10 minutes a day to master my system, then next thing you know, you're going to be raking in the money or blah, blah, blah. So always use that to your advantage. And finally, this is one of my favorites, is implied admission of total loserdom as the title of this slide.
Implied admission of total loserdom.
Of total loserdom. Okay, here's the deal. You want to imply that if someone doesn't follow your advice or buy your stuff, then they're a complete loser. You don't ever want to come out and say that, but you can imply it. You can use a little nasty psychology in their mind, and I suggest you don't go overboard with this. I'll give you some overboard examples that are kind of silly, but use this with respect. But here's an example. You kind of want to say, you're not one of those people, are you? So you might want to come along and say, if I were selling business opportunity, for example, I might say, listen, I want you to know up front that this stuff is not for everybody. If you're a pipe dreamer, or if you're the type of person who buys courses like this and then lets them gather dust on the shelf, or if you're someone who would rather talk about it than do it, then please, this isn't for you. Now, I'll just stop right there. Basically, what I'm saying is if you don't buy this, if you don't do what I say, then you're one of these types of people. You know, so naturally that your prospect is going to be, no, I'm not one of those kinds of people, therefore it is for me, right? Here's a stupid example of it that's like more broad. Listen, my stuff isn't for everybody. It's not for losers, terrorists, or people who kill kittens. So therefore, if you're not a kitten-killing terrorist loser, you might benefit from putting my methods to work for you. You see? And it's very powerful. As silly as it is, it's extremely powerful because you're covering yourself against any sort of false claims, and you're being straight up with them by saying, hey, you know, this isn't a magic bullet or whatever. And you're also going out and saying, if you don't try this and put it to use, then you're not really serious about getting, you know, the result you're after, whether it's about business opportunities or mowing your grass or what have you.
You know, Frank, in a previous session here, I just, you know, kind of mentioned it in passing, but It's an old saying, people don't like to be sold, but they love to buy. And some of the things that you're talking about here, what they're calling up for me, there's something subtle that you're talking about. There's something that, might be kind of, flying by without being noticed, which is when you say to a person, this isn't for this type of a person, or when you make a damaging admission, or when you're, honest with them about a situation like the way Dean Jackson described, that what you're doing is you're taking the pressure off. You're no longer pushing them into doing something. You're giving them the opportunity to say, no, you know what? I want to do this. And they're making the decision. They're taking responsibility for it inside. And it's powerful persuasion. Very powerful.
Yeah, it works. I mean, everybody's got the story of going to some store or somewhere and like meeting up with a salesperson there and thinking that person was great and then telling their friends about them, about their experience. And the conversation is almost always like this. I went to the XYZ store the other day to get a Y, and man, it was so cool. I met this dude, his name's Bob, and he was great. Ended up getting 2 Ys. It was awesome. He was really cool. He didn't try to sell me anything or whatever. He was just showing me the stuff, and it was a really good time. Or, hey, you should go to the XYZ store. Their dudes are really cool over there. They don't work on commission or whatever. They won't jump down your throat. They just help you out. It's awesome. And all of those are like, oh, I had this wonderful experience. They didn't try to sell me anything. And one way to convey that is to just come right out and say it, which sounds ridiculous, but it works like a champ. So you can say something like, listen, you know what? I know this is going to sound hypey and like I'm going to try to sell you something right here, and that's fine. But the fact of the matter is, this thing really works, and I genuinely want you to have it. It's not for everybody. And it might not work for you. That's up to you. But I really think you owe it to yourself to at least give it a try. And you know what? That's why we have the guarantee in place. Blah, blah, blah. You just immediately disarm it. So I'm not trying to put any pressure on you at all, but the fact of the matter is we have 27,943 people on the waiting list, and there are 15 copies of this left. So if you think it's for you, which it may or may not be, it's your decision, I urge you to go ahead and make up your mind and act at 9 o'clock in the morning when the doors open and this website goes live, because otherwise you might miss out. You see? You're putting a tremendous amount of pressure on them, but the fact that you just said, I'm not trying to put any pressure on you, diffuses that. As crazy as it sounds, it actually works.
Well, what you're doing, though, is, in a way, you're not putting, not to argue with you here, but just psychological semantics here, but you're not putting pressure on them. You're letting them put the pressure on themselves.
Yeah, beautiful. Great. You're just, you're like handing them the pressure putter on her, and they're pressing the pressure button, I guess, within their own minds,
Exactly.
Here's the pressure button. Your mind can press it at any minute.
Yeah, it's more of a natural, I don't know, I see a real distinction, especially if you're telling the truth. If there are 30,000 people on the list and if there are 15 of them available, you're framing it in a way that automatically has the person go, oh, you know what, I got to get to action here. You're not like a car salesman who's like, using some weird, dishonest technique, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, and it's like everything I've said is assuming that you're telling the truth, So let's assume that there really are 20,000 people, and let's say you've got 500 or whatever, because 15 would be kind of ridiculous. You could say, you know what, this is really starting to freak me out, and you can take it or leave it at face value. I think you ought to know that there are 27,423 people on the waiting list. Now, I don't know if they're all going to try to buy tomorrow, but we only have 500 kits available, and it's just a matter of simple math. There are probably more than 500 people who are chomping at the bit to get this thing right now. Is that you? I don't really know. Is this right for you? Maybe. I say probably, but those are the facts. Now, with that said, I think you should go ahead and take advantage of this incredible opportunity if you think this is right for you, and here's why. Blah, blah, blah. Speaking of that, we have this great guarantee, and and you just go on. So you're just totally framing it beautifully and mellow, I know it seems like I'm coming on to you like this is a cheesy pickup line, but didn't I see you at the neurosurgeons convention the other week? Same kind of thing. I happen to go to the neurosurgeons conventions all the time.
And you use cheesy pickup lines, I assume, too.
Yeah, neurosurgery. So that's it, man. That's the end of my fancy PowerPoint thing.
Frank, thank you very much for contributing and participating. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
It was my pleasure. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hope I helped out with something, and best of luck to all.